Welcome to Movies in the Making. In today's episode, we are going to be looking at the 1922 classic horror film Nosferatu, originally released by Film Arts Guild and directed by F.W. Murnau. Here, we will dive deep into the story of the production of this film. This film was loosely based on the acclaimed novel Dracula by Bram Stoker. Considering adapting the book was unauthorized, you might already imagine there was so much trouble when it came to making the film. However, there is so much more to say about it, which is already saying a lot about a silent film. So, sit back and enjoy the show. You are all in for a pestilent ride. Nosferatu is a loose adaptation of Bram Stoker's 1897 novel Dracula, but faced legal issues because the filmmakers did not secure the rights to the novel. Despite claiming in its opening titles that it was an adaptation, the film made many changes to the original story. Director Friedrich Wilhelm Murnau's version features a different vampire, Count Orlok, who is a creepy, nocturnal humanoid instead of the suave, aristocratic Count Dracula. The plot also differs significantly, including a focus on sunlight as the vampire's weakness rather than the traditional stake through the heart, and the sacrificial woman taking part in the monster's defeat, as opposed to the group effort in Dracula. Friedrich Wilhelm Murnau became the director of Nosferatu in 1921 after being approached by producer and art director Albin Grau, who had a deep interest in the occult and had been influenced by the horrors of the First World War and the 1918-1920 flu pandemic. Grau, who had experienced the war firsthand, chose Murnau, a fellow veteran, to bring his vision to life. Murnau, a rising director, had already worked on several successful films and was known for his unique approach to filmmaking. He brought a photographic realism to Nosferatu, departing from the theatrical German Expressionist style of the era. The film was inspired by folklore of vampires and was, in part, a response to post-war and pandemic fears. Max Schreck's portrayal of Count Orlok in Nosferatu is widely regarded as one of the most intense and believable performances in horror cinema, which led to a fascinating rumor that Schreck might actually have been a real vampire hired by Murnau. These rumors quickly grew partly because Schreck was largely unknown before Nosferatu and had never worked on a film set. During the production, he remained fully in character, even during breaks, and was rarely seen without his makeup and costume. His eerie, unsettling presence on screen only adds to the legend, and his name, Max Schreck, meaning utmost terror in German, seemed to fit his role perfectly. All these mysterious elements made people wonder if he was somehow more than just an actor. The rumor is even the subject matter for the film Shadow of the Vampire, Lionsgate 2000. In reality, the truth behind Schreck's involvement in Nosferatu is far more conventional. Schreck was a trained actor, having studied at the Berliner Staatstheater and worked at several prominent theaters in Germany, including the Münchner Kammerspiele. Before Nosferatu, he had small roles in a few films, and after the success of Nosferatu, his career continued, primarily in supporting roles. Beyond film, Schreck was also a prolific theater actor, performing in over 700 roles and starring in more than 50 films before his death in 1936. While his performance as Orlok remains iconic, Schreck's career was rooted in traditional acting, and the vampire rumors surrounding him are a testament to the power of his chilling portrayal of the character. Gustav von Wangenheim was cast in Nosferatu largely due to his established reputation in German cinema and his theatrical background. He had been a well-regarded actor in German theater before being selected for his role of Hutter, the protagonist. His casting was likely influenced by his experience and the trust that Murnau had in his ability to portray the character of Thomas Hutter. Greta Schroeder was cast in Nosferatu after Murnau recognized her as a talented actress, and he chose her for the role in the film due to her acting abilities. While Murnau was deeply focused on achieving the film's haunting atmosphere, he also valued Schroeder's screen presence and ability to portray the innocence and vulnerability needed for her character. Her performance was crucial to balancing the film's darker, more monstrous elements, particularly in her interactions with Count Orlok. Schroeder's portrayal of Ellen added an emotional depth to the film, particularly in the final scenes. Schroeder's role in the film helped cement her status as an important actress in early German cinema, and her performance continues to be remembered as an integral part of the film's lasting legacy. Henrik Galeen wrote the screenplay for Nosferatu in 1921, adapting it unofficially from Bram Stoker's Dracula. The film's producer, Albin Grau, envisioned the monstrous Count Orlok as a terrifying, vermin-like vampire influenced by Eastern European folklore and the personal occult interests. Galeen, along with Grau, shaped Orlok's creepy appearance and eerie presence, which departed from previous vampire portrayals. The screenplay was notable for its subtle yet chilling depiction of the vampire, making it more monstrous and associated with plague and disease rather than seduction. While the film closely follows the plot of Dracula, it changed key elements in an attempt to avoid legal troubles. For example, the vampire in Nosferatu is named Count Orlok instead of Dracula, and his death occurs in the sunlight, which in Stoker's novel only weakens vampires. Unlike Stoker's suave, aristocratic Dracula, Orlok is portrayed as a monstrous, animal-like creature. Additionally, Orlok does not create new vampires by biting his victims, but simply kills them. These changes, though only made for legal reasons, help to shape modern vampire lore, including the idea of vampires being vulnerable to sunlight. Filming for Nosferatu started in July 1921 with a very limited budget, so the filmmakers could only afford one camera. Most of the scenes set in Germany were filmed in the port city of Wismar, while the Transylvanian scenes were shot in northern Slovakia at the Orava Castle, which you can visit today. Murnau chose a different approach from the popular expressionist style of the time, focusing on creating suspense by using the natural, rural landscapes. He framed the shots in a way that echoed classic German romantic art. Nosferatu was filmed in natural settings, marking a departure from the typical artificial sets used in German Expressionist cinema. The film is set in real locations, such as the Carpathian Mountains and a small Baltic town, instead of the murky, stylized backdrops. The photography, clear and naturalistic, avoids the elaborate lighting effects common in other Expressionist works, emphasizing a realistic portrayal of these environments. The trick photography that does appear, like self-opening doors and swiftly moving carriages, is not meant to blend seamlessly with the real world, but instead creates a disorienting effect that unsettles the viewer. This straightforward, almost simplistic use of special effects helps keep the natural world central to the film's atmosphere, where the natural and the fantastic often blend in unsettling ways. Murnau's use of long shots and deep focus photography plays a significant role in shaping the film's tone. Instead of focusing on isolated details, Murnau allowed the space itself to become a key element of the film, with the world around the characters constantly intruding. The open, fluid spaces create a sense of unease, where even the most mundane environments seem oppressive and uncanny. This technique contrasts with the expressionist style, which typically fills the frame with objects and dense, symbolic set pieces. In Nosferatu, the natural world feels both inescapable and hostile, contributing to the film's eerie, haunting atmosphere. The physical world, rather than the characters, is the true protagonist, with death, symbolized by the vampire, permeating everything. The sense of the supernatural being embedded in the everyday world enhances the film's atmosphere, making the world itself feel sinister, even in its most ordinary moments. The premiere of Nosferatu took place on the 4th of March 1922 in the Marble Room of the Berlin Zoological Garden, where attendees celebrated in 19th century Biedermeier costumes, setting a unique atmosphere for the event. The film was an adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula, but was not authorized, which led to immediate controversy. Florence Balcombe, Stoker's widow, was outraged upon learning about the film, even though she never watched it. She believed that Nosferatu was a pirated version of her husband's work, which had been a significant source of income for her over the years. In response, she launched a campaign to prevent the film's distribution, taking legal action and filing multiple lawsuits against the filmmakers. As a result of her efforts, the courts ordered the destruction of many copies of the film, but by then, several prints had already been distributed internationally and were preserved by film collectors. This preservation effort, particularly by Henry Langlois, who safeguarded the film in film archives, ensured that Nosferatu survived and could be passed down through generations. Due to the legal complications, the film entered the public domain, especially after its copyright was never renewed in the US. Eventually, in 2019, the full version of Nosferatu was officially recognized as being in the public domain, making it freely accessible to audiences worldwide. Despite the initial attempts to suppress it, Nosferatu's legacy endured due to the efforts of collectors and film historians who kept the film alive for future generations. Hans Erdmann became the composer for Nosferatu after F.W. Murnau decided to create a haunting score for his 1922 film. The original score was integral to the film's atmosphere, incorporating operatic elements such as a piece from Heinrich Marschner's opera Der Vampire, which introduced an operatic thread that would influence later interpretations. Despite legal battles that led to the destruction of many copies of the film, Erdmann's score, only partially preserved, was later constructed by musicologists. Notably, Brent Heller's 1984 version of the score, which became the standard for home video releases, altered Erdmann's original by removing Marschner's piece and blending in works from composers like Verdi and Boito. Heller's score added operatic passages that intensified the film's mood, particularly through Verdi's Un ballo in maschera and Boito's Mephistophela, drawing thematic connections between the opera's characters and the film's plot, such as the parallels between Orlok and a devilish figure in Mephistophela. This innovative approach to the film's music became an important part of its legacy, influencing later adaptations, including Herzog's Nosferatu the Vampire. As of 9th of January 2025, Nosferatu has a 97% critics rating on Rotten Tomatoes, a 7.8 rating on IMDb, and a 3.9 rating on Letterboxd. The film's exploitation of fear, obsession, and death remains relevant, and its influence extends beyond horror to impact cinema as a whole. It also holds cultural significance as a product of the Weimar Republic, reflecting the uncertainty of the time. Today, Nosferatu continues to captivate viewers and inspire filmmakers, cementing its place as a timeless masterpiece in the horror genre. Its impact is that significant that a film named Shadow of the Vampire, which fictionalizes the production of Nosferatu, was released by Lionsgate in 2000. The character Count Orlok even featured in SpongeBob SquarePants Season 2, Episode 16A, Graveyard Shift, at the end as the one flickering the lights. In 2005 or 2006, Eureka released a restored version of Nosferatu. The original film was in public domain. Differences between the public domain version and its restored version are numerous, particularly in terms of visual and musical elements. In the silent film era, color was limited, and while hand coloring was expensive, tinting and toning became more common. In the public domain version, Nosferatu was originally monochrome, but the restored version includes the use of colors to indicate different times of day: cyan and green for nighttime, pink for twilight, and yellow for daylight, with the Venus flytrap scene in red and orange. In terms of music, the original score by Hans Erdmann was believed lost, but recent restorations have reconstructed it for 2 suites, while earlier restorations used different musical scores. The restored version also brings back the original intertitles, which were sometimes replaced or poorly adapted in later versions. Moreover, the restored version uses original names for the characters, such as Count Orlok and Hutter, while the public domain version features the altered names like Count Dracula and Jonathan Harker due to changes made when the film was brought to the US from France in 1947. These differences highlight how the restored version aims to preserve the film's original artistic and narrative intent, while the public domain version has been modified over time. Nosferatu is considered one of the most important films of the German Expressionist movement, which flourished in the 1920s. This artistic movement sought to escape realism, instead favoring exaggerated, fantastical worlds to express deep psychological states like fear, anxiety, and despair. Emerging from post-First World War Germany, a nation plagued by political turmoil, economic collapse, and the trauma of the Spanish flu pandemic, Nosferatu reflected the dark and troubled emotions of the time. The character of Count Orlok, a grotesque and inhumane vampire, is a stark contrast to the more charming, suave versions of vampires seen in later films like Dracula. His monstrous appearance and unsettling presence evoke a sense of dread, capturing the collective anxiety of a society reeling from the horrors of war and disease. Orlok's eerie control over life and death mirrors the growing fears of authoritarianism, foreshadowing the rise of fascism and the Nazi regime in Germany. The film also contributed to shaping vampire lore, establishing lasting tropes like the vampire's vulnerability to sunlight, which would become a staple in the genre. Its innovative use of real-world locations added to the gothic atmosphere, making the horror feel more immediate and believable. A century after its release, Nosferatu continues to influence not only the horror genre but cinema as a whole. The film's blend of psychological horror, visual style, and its portrayal of existential dread has inspired modern horror filmmakers, including those working in the elevated horror subgenre, which blends traditional scares with deeper, more psychological themes. Nosferatu's enduring legacy proves its significance in shaping how we think of fear, power, and the human condition in cinema. And that wraps up our deep dive into the making of Nosferatu. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to stay updated on all things movies in the making. Let us know in the comments what you think of Nosferatu, or if you have any favorite moments from the film we did not touch upon, or what films you would like to hear covered by this channel. Also be sure to check out our community page, where we announce what films will be talked about by this channel each week. New posts arrive every Friday. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you all next time on Movies in the Making, where we will be talking about An American Werewolf in London, Universal Pictures, 1981, and more films to follow along the way. Tune in for more Movies in the Making as we uncover the stories behind cinema's most unforgettable films. This has been Jason Scotchmer, film enthusiast and passionate about the arts.